We are here to actually provide all the support to develop students to become a confident graduate that is needed by the industry. Please feel welcome to visit us to see how we do our transformation of students.
Very good morning, Professor Dr. Badrul, Hisham, and fellow audience. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you again to Professor Badrul for accepting us to join us on this wonderful morning. Just a note, a gentle reminder to all viewers, please do fill out the form in order to collect your ESET. The link will be posted down below. Okay, so today, as we know, we'll be discussing and sharing with us about ethics in animal research. So I'll pass it on to Professor Badrul to give us a little intro on what we're going to talk about today.
Thank you very much, Sharren. Okay, I'll give you some introductions about the animal facilities in USM. So first of all, I would like to thank to SEGi for inviting me to the session this morning. And can you see that on the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'll give you some introductions about animal facilities at USM. So I'm Associate Professor Dr. Badrul Hisham Yahaya. I'm currently the Director of Animal Research and Service Center in USM. So as a Center for Animal Research and Service Center, we aim to become like a preferred center for animal research, animal services, as well as training and teaching in animal use. For animal research facilities in USM, basically we have 3 campuses. Now we have 3 main facilities. One is the main campus. We have a very conventional animal facilities that have the holding and animal testing facilities for small animals operation theater suite. And at the same time, we have facilities for animal necropsy. And in Health Campus, we have a new building, a 3-story building that have both animal breeding supplies and for large animals and small animals. And we will have animal biosafety laboratory class 2 and 3 and specific pathogen-free animals and all these facilities. At the same time, we have another facilities in USM Bertam, Penang. This is also the center that belongs to Advanced Medical and Dental Institute in Bertam. And that facilities has also equipped with a breeding center to supply animal for researchers for USM and also outside USM. And that facilities also have OECD GLP accredited facilities for toxicity testing as well as preclinical testing for that particular industry for product development and evaluations. And basically, the functions of ARASC, we have 2 animal facilities function. We have 2 basic or fundamental services that we have. One is we have animal breeder center and supply animals. We have various type of animals that you can see on the screen, especially on rat and mice and also the sheep. If you can see that there are different types of rats and also different type of mice as well for research. It's not only the one that we've seen at home, and we can see that everywhere nearby. But this is a very high quality animals that to be used for research purpose. And at the same time, we also provide services that related to animal-based training. We have like animal procedures, services related to existing facilities and spaces, We also provide services related to skill and knowledge, especially to train researchers in terms of animal handling, animal procedures, etc. As I mentioned earlier, we also breed and supply animal for research, teaching, and preclinical testing. And the largest animal that we have, if we have a sheep, Barbados black belly, which is in Kubang Krian, Kelantan. And the rest of the animals we have in Batam and also as the main campus. So the good things about animal research facilities in USM Kelantan is that we have open field testing area for large animals. So meaning that if researchers, when they have the preclinical data, use a small animal model system like rat, mice, or rabbit, then they want to evaluate using large animal model system like bone implantations, organ transplantation, they can perhaps use our open field testing area in Kelantan using either sheep or, and dogs and also other animals that we can also facilitate in that particular areas of interest. As a service center, we also provide teaching and training at ARASC, and we receive various applications, whether from USM students and researchers. We also, welcoming and receive researchers outside of USM coming to ARASC, for the training, for lab animal training. And we also provide teaching session, field teaching with the students in ARASC who are, taking up biomedical program or pharmacology program or a medical program or health program related. So they are coming to ARASC for learning, lab management, animal management, as well as husbandry of the animals. And we also provide training, as I mentioned earlier, training for animal handling, injection procedures, for those researchers who require that certain type of, techniques or skills for their research purpose. They will come to us and having training. So blood collection procedures, for example, and oral gavage techniques, that's a very important for researchers who are working on that animal research. And the most important thing, we also working on laboratory animal training for teachers. When we supply animal to the school, and teachers will use the animals for their lab practicals in science subjects, for example. And we realize some of the teachers, they don't have proper knowledge and skills in handling animals, but will give a very harmful effect to the teachers, when the animals bite or scratch the skin, whatever. So there is some infection will occur. So therefore, taking that advantage, we also provide a laboratory animal training for teachers, teaching, laboratory animals for the students, so that knowledge will come back to the schools and they will train the student with the proper techniques and knowledge. So these are some of the examples of teachers in action that are coming to ARASC, from various schools. These are teachers coming from. And in fact, we have collaborated with Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Pulau Pinang and also Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri Kelantan, as well as Perda, who support the teachers who come to ARASC for the training. The support is actually related to consumables, the animals, the cost for the animals, that's it. So the teachers come and learn all the techniques and having small lectures so that they can get knowledge. At the same time, they can get skills in handling the animals. And these are the examples of teaching in Penang. So these are the facilities that we have in Advanced Medical Dental Institute, or IPPT, in Batam campus. These are very beautiful building and with equipments, like very high-end equipments, and that can house and do the experiments for preclinical testing. And basically, why do we need to have animal facilities? Because we need to have a proper housing for management of the animals and husbandry of the animals. So to ensure the animal well-being and quality of the research data that will produce for that particular experiment. And we also require good management of laboratory animals to take care of their welfare, to allow animals to grow and, to have their own biological process, and at the same time, to minimize the variation that can affect the quality of research and the results, and as well as the reproducibility of the data. Reproducibility of the data is very, very much important in scientific research. And what are the basic components in animal research facilities? Normally, these are the some of the basic components in animal facilities, like animal breeding area, animal holding area. We're also having like, quarantine area when to receive the animals from outside of our facilities. We need to quarantine first for 2 weeks before we proceed with holding, before we proceed with the procedures of the animals, so that we can avoid or minimize the transfections or infections coming out from our building or facilities. We also have to make sure that we have enough space for the staff to move around, so that they can also will take care of the healthy, the welfare of the staff and the safety of the staff as well in handling the animals. And so I give you some example of the cages that we use for rabbit cage. So normally rabbit will be housed individually. For the breeding purpose, we breed 2 animals, male and females animals, then in one cage, so that we can have more offsprings for the breeding and supplies. And the spaces for the animals must be very adequate, so that the animal feel like like they like a home for themselves, not under stress and not under pressure, so they can breed, they can do some kind of activity. So if the animal stress or under a not good condition, they will affect our data and our experimental output. So this is animal cages for rats. These are very expensive cages. So one cage is equivalent, 3 cages equivalent like 30,000 ringgit. So that's why the animals for research is very expensive. And these are examples of animal caging system. For breeding area for mice, we have a conventional, you can see on your left is a very conventional kind of cages system for mice. And on your right is we call it individually ventilated caging system. This is where we keep the animals so that it can under very well maintained conditions, so that the animals have less probability to get infections or have a variation between animals. That is the purpose of breeding, to supply the animals for high quality research. And we have caging for rats. Normally caging for rats and mice quite similar, but the difference only the sizes. And we have the holding for mice as well. The mice, the rats, and the rabbit cannot be kept in the same room. So for example, for mice, we have to put at different rooms, and the rats for different rooms, and the rabbit for different rooms. Even if there is also the mice and the rats, but they have a different species, a different strain, we call it. So then we can also need to separate them between rooms as well, because we want to avoid some kind of variation between animals, and animals would be under stress. So this is holding facilities for rat, and this is holding facilities for rabbits. And this is where we store our food and bedding in a cold room, so that it can maintain the quality and of the foods and also the bedding. This is the washing area, because we use a conventional kind of facilities. We have our own proper cleaning and cages storage area. And we also need to have our euthanasia, where we kill the animals for the purpose of final stage of the experiment. At the same time, we need also to have a carcass storage, where the dead body of the animals will be stored before we incinerate the animals using the commercial companies to take our dead animals, and then they can dispose the animals using a proper kind of techniques. So what are the factors that consider in management of laboratory animals? There are various type of factors. The most important thing, the species, strain, and breed of the animals are very much important. As I mentioned earlier, we need to separate them rather than pull them together in one room. So it will cause the animals stress and under pressure. So with that note, I give you some brief introductions about the animal facilities in USM. So I'm willing to get answers questions and try to answer any question from your side.
Okay, thank you. So can you share with us roughly how many years have you been in this field?
Okay, thank you, Sharren. I was basically I'm bachelor holder. I have a degree in genetics from Universiti Sains Malaysia, and I've got my master degree in human genetics in in USM, Kubang Krian, Kelantan. And I did my PhD in Edinburgh, and I finished Edinburgh, Scotland, and I finished in 2010. So I joined USM in 2010 in June. At that time, I was in medical school, Kubang Krian, Kelantan. So in 2012, I left medical school, and then I joined Advanced Medical and Dental Institute in Batam in 2012 in February. And I was then appointed as an associate professor in January 2016. And basically I'm in USM now is almost 11 years. And I'm also now editor-in-chief for series or series editors and associate editors for various type of journals. My focus areas on research on stem cell and regenerative medicines. So that's all about myself and the experience in USM and animal study.
Okay, I would like to further know if this was your own interest or how did you come about to learn about this field?
Okay, when I did my first degree in genetics, I was really interested in genetics, especially on forensic. I like to be like investigator, criminal investigator or something. But when I did my master's, I also focused on human genetics to study more about, human disease and how genetics can help in terms of diagnostic and treatment, etc. But at that time, in 2003, for example, it was really, really, huge potential about genetics. But I need to further my PhD in Edinburgh at that time because a scholarship asked me to go to Edinburgh and pursue my PhD. And I did my PhD on gene therapy in stem cells in University of Edinburgh. At that time, I was in veterinary school in University of Edinburgh. So I worked with animals, that was my first time working with animals. We use a sheep as our model system. Sitting yourself putting yourself in veterinary schools, you can see we have clinics, we have researchers. At the same time, we're working on various type of animals. It's really feeling very much interest on veterinary science, especially the animals for disease modeling. So that's how it started. And now after finish my PhD in 2010, all my experiments and research and grant that I obtained, all are related to animals for preclinical testing. It was really interesting one.
That sounds very interesting. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, Professor, how would you define animal research? What is it about?
Okay, when we talk about the animal research, some of people might have misunderstanding about manipulations of the animals for the purpose of getting the human benefits. It is not actually, but why we need the animal research? Because it's referred to the scientific study of the animals, using animals, usually in laboratory animals, to have a very scientific data. The purpose of gaining new biological knowledge and solving specific medical or veterinary, medical, dental, or biological problems, where we cannot get all these answers using in vitro model system. Some of the researchers might use, in vitro model system in order for them to understand about the disease, for example. But the fact that there are some limitation using in vitro model system at certain level, because in which we cannot find any, biological responses, for example. So therefore, using animal study is really important for us to understand about the disease and about the behavior, not only behavior of the humans, but also behavior of the animals. And for drug developments and testing is a very much important using animal model system. And as I mentioned earlier, is a disease modeling. So disease modeling, we cannot use only the cells, but we need to use the animal itself. So therefore, the research that we are working on animals must be very valid and translatable for the humankind, and especially must make sense in terms of the information that we've got in terms of biological responses, the pharmacokinetics and pharmacology effects of the drugs and etc. on the animals before it can be translated to the human. Yeah.
Thank you. So I would like to further go towards what are like the ethical approach towards animal research on your point of view?
Okay. So the most important things about the animals, ethical approach. Uh, Everyone, whether they use cell lines, whether they use genetics or DNA from any individuals, or whether they use animals for the purpose of their study, the ethical codes of ethical conducts of research is very, very much important, especially when you get the cells from the individual to study the in vitro, for example. You need to get permissions from the individual themselves. You need to get the internal board review approval for you to do that kind of experiment using manipulations of the human cells. For the animals as well, if you use the animals for your study, you must also to ensure to get the approval from we call it ICO, internal animal ethic committee, or internal review board, who will go through your application to evaluate the effectiveness of your proposal, your understanding about the animals, before they can allow you to conduct any research in animals. So they have to make sure the personnel who conduct the experiments, as well as the welfare of the animals, also will be taken care of. So these are very much important and must be, taken care by all individuals who are working on animals for research, as well as the genetics and as well as the cell lines, the purpose of advancements in biomedical research. So ethical approach is very much important, especially in animal research for biomedical research, etc. Yeah.
Okay, this is one question from me out of curiosity. So for example, let's take an animal which is on the brink of extinction. Is it ethical to try to help the population of the animal to come back naturally, or is it better to leave it alone?
Yeah. Sometimes there are huge discussion about, can we re-exist the extinction animals? The animals are already gone, and we don't have them anymore in our land. But what would happen if we can preserve that animals, so that we can have that population for the next few years? That will be the use of biotechnology in the purpose of preserving our nature. So that would be also some kind of ethical consideration. Some of the animals extinct because of the human activities. So the way to preserve the population is trying to bring them to the other locations. But the other location sometimes is not really good for them, because they need to have their own original place where they can have their own activities and biological response towards the environment, etc. But it also cannot preserve the population. But one of the use of biotechnology as well, to take the DNA of the animals to get the sperm and ovum and try to make them fertilize, and then we can store in a -80 or liquid nitrogen for the long-term preservations of that particular animal species. It also can be done, but it might be a bit difficult, because when the land evolve, the animals also evolve. So we have dinosaur at one time, so now we don't have animal dinosaur. So, but we have the elephants, we have the giraffe. But why they still can maintain during at this century? But perhaps the condition, the environment itself can also preserve them. But it's also is allowable and ethically correct to preserve the animal by taking the genetics and cellular materials for it to maintain their population. But sometimes the genetic that you preserve is not really strong enough, to maintain the
Yeah, that's because sometimes maybe to my feelings, like sometimes people, or I will feel like it's better to not mess with nature. It's best to leave it alone. Some like the belief, yeah. But now when you have explained it, so I have a different point of view now.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, so like, are there any important laws for us to know in order to carry out animal research?
Okay. There is an act, we call it the Animal Welfare Act, which is renewed in 2015, but it was actually 1980 something or 1970 something, the Animal Acts. So now it's already been updated in 2015. So you can call it the Animal Welfare Act 2015. So there is also recently, based on that Animal Welfare Act 2015, the Malaysian government already come up with Malaysian Code of Practice for the care and the use of animals to scientific purposes. We call it My Code. So that is international guidelines, also call it Guide to the Care and the Use of Animals for Laboratory Animals Aid Edition, for example. So the acts and also the guideline is actually to ensure, but by Animal Welfare Acts is not governed in terms of animal research that much, but My Code is actually govern the use of animals for research purposes. For example, Sharren, you have the dogs at home, and then you're not taking care of your dogs very well, and you don't really care of their welfare, and you allow the dogs to go to anywhere they like and poo at your neighbor's home, and making noises or trouble, harmful to your neighbors. So your neighbors can lodge a report, and the action can be taken to you because you're not taking care of your animals properly according to the welfare and the management of the animals. Therefore, the action can be taken according to Animal Welfare Act 2015. So you can be jailed, or you can be compounded with a certain amount of money. I think the maximum will be 100,000 something. So you have to take care of the animals in your home, whether the cats or the rabbits. Sometimes they love to have their rabbit as a pet. Sometimes they love to have the cats as the pets and the dogs as the pets. But the owner is not really taking care of their pets properly. That also can be charged under Animal Welfare Act 2015. And for researchers, if you are researchers and scientists, then at the same time for Animal Welfare Acts also can be taken to you, but under that Animal Welfare Acts, they have Malaysian Code of Practice for the care and the use of animals for research purposes. We call it My Code. Okay.
Okay, so let's go deeper on your center. So what type or in what form can you like your animal care service, like, do you provide?
Okay. In animal facilities, as I mentioned earlier during my presentation, we have like different type of services. One is when researchers, they wanted to do the experiment in our service, in our facility, we do have the quarantine room where the animals is actually coming from outside of our facilities. They need to be kept for quarantine at least 7 days or 2 weeks or 10 days. And before they can transfer to holding procedures or holding facilities for that particular animals. The holding facilities where you keep your animals before the animals is taken out for the experiments or giving any treatments. So we do have a surgery room. If you like to do like dissection, you want to do like surgery for your animals, for your animal laboratory, like you need to do dissection, you need to do some implantation to the animals. We do have a surgery rooms. And we also provide service to take care of your animal for those researchers who are unable to take care of the animals, but they need to do the experimental procedures in our facilities. So we can provide the service for management and care, especially for husbandry kind of procedures. So these will be done by our trained personnel. So we also have the basic procedures like restraining, injection, oral feeding, oral gavage, and blood collection. This will be done by our skilled personnel as well. And if you have the animals procedures completed and you have the dead body of the animals, you need to dispose them. So we do also have the service for carcass disposal of laboratory animals. And we also provide to you with a lab animal training. For example, as I mentioned, we have a different kind of packages for the laboratory animal training. And there is a one-to-one kind of a coaching. And at the same time, we also can transport your animal from one facility to another facilities. That we have design and animal transportation.
So, based on the pictures that you have showed just now, for example, like the rabbit cage, like as you said, they are very expensive. You know? So how do the center like run it like financially? Is there any form of funding, or maybe you could like, is it your personal expenditure?
Okay. Because of USM establish animal research service center. So meaning that this center would be kind of a center for excellence in USM. We provide service. But in order for us to manage the center, we need the money. So in order to establish the facilities, we need also the money. So in this case, Universiti Sains Malaysia invested or gave some amount of money for us to buy cages, to develop facilities, to develop room, etc. So all the facilities that we bought and for the cages, for the animals husbandry, is actually bought by USM. The money given by USM to us for us to develop this kind of center. But at the same time, we also require money for operational costs of our center, like electricity bills, all this kind of management, to travel, to have a meeting, so etc. That operational cost also covered, managed by USM. But USM gave us the money every year, then we manage that money. So, but how we get all this profit in terms of services that I just mentioned to you, all these animals facilities, how we get the money out of our service. So therefore, we have services like breed and supply animals. We got the money, we sell that animals, and we got the money, give back to USM. So we have all the spaces rented to the researchers, and professional services that we have, we provide to the researchers. The money that we got from this, we also give back to USM. At the same time, we have all the training and enhanced knowledge and skill that we provide. That also that money goes back to USM. So whatever USM gave us to money for manage and to develop, and we need to get back the money and give back to USM. So this is how the circles of.
I see. Okay. Okay. I see. Okay. Thank you very much. So I would like to know, in your opinion, because this topic is also something new to me, but what do you think of Malaysians' understanding on animal research in this field in general?
Okay, if you ask me about Malaysian understanding on animal research in scientific field, for example, I can divide the answers into 4 sections. One is the public themselves. So normally the public, like, the pakcik, the makcik, the uncles, all the businessmen, they are all the publics. But they have a very lack of knowledge in terms of about the use of animals in research. But they might know the animals is actually used for pets. They put the house, the pets in the house, like they might know, like they might not believe that the rats and mice is kept in very high quality air conditioning condition. So they don't know that. So they have a lack of knowledge on that. So, but if you divide that understanding into primary and secondary school, some of them, they might have a little knowledge about the use of animal research, especially for secondary school. If you take like science stream at Form 3, Form 4, Form 5, for examples, you might have experience of having practical session in your class with a science teacher. They teach you on how to handle the animals, to do the dissection, to learn about the organs. So at the same time, you know that this kind of knowledge about the use of animals for research. But when it comes to undergraduate student, you are lucky if you are biomedical students or health-based, health-related program. You might be exposed with the use of animals for certain type of your topics and during a lecture, for example. Then you know you have knowledge, but it is limited to bio and health-related programs. But if you are in the postgraduate students that directly involved in biomedical research, yes, you will understand better in terms of the ethical concern, why we use the animals for research. Then you have this kind of knowledge, advanced knowledge, for example, about the use of animal in research. So I divide it into four, which is public, primary and secondary students, and undergraduate students and postgraduate students. So they have a different level of understanding about the use of animals.
I see. Thank you very much on that. So, because based on the pictures that you have shown, I've seen that you have like many students. It's like a large group. So, like roughly around how many people like do you work with?
Okay, normally, for example, like bio school, the students required to learn about immunology, for example. So immunology response in animals. So they need to inject certain antigens to the animals to learn on how immunological response to that particular antigens. So normally they have around 80 students, undergraduate students. So these 80 undergraduate students, they will come to ARASC for learning about the animals, procedures, injection procedures in ARASC. But in Kubang Krian, for example, they have a medical student, they have health student, biomedical student. So around 100 or 80 to 100 students are coming to our center to learn about the animals research. But in total, most of the postgraduate students, around I think 50 students are using our facilities, but they have a different types of research activities in our facility.
But that's actually many students, because I've never thought like this field is known to many people. So yeah. Okay. Thank you.
If we're taking like biomedical students, for example, biomedical students, there are not many, around 30, 40 somethings. And some of them, only few who are really working on animals. So they're not really many students. Yeah.
Okay. So how would you say or talk about like how advanced are we in this field, like in Malaysia especially? Like, are we very advanced, or are we still behind, or are we like still on the verge of like rising up?
Yeah. Okay, that's a very good question, Sharren. For me, in our Malaysian researchers or public attitude is that when talking about the advancements of our facilities in Malaysia, we always look up the Western countries and look up other outsides of Malaysia in terms of their facilities. But most of us don't aware that those facilities also available in Malaysia. So, for example, like besides SEGi, we have like very close to SEGi, we have iFarm. Have you heard about iFarm?
No, I've never heard of it.
Pharmaceutical and Neuraceutical Center. That's they have facilities for animal facilities, very huge animal facilities in iFarm, and also in our facilities as well. In USM, in IPPT, for example, we have OECD GLP accredited lab for preclinical testing. And this accreditation is by a National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency, or NPRA, under Minister of Health, and the Standard Malaysia, who give this accreditation to animal facility that meets the criteria, international criteria. So that facilities give the advancements in preclinical testing for drug delivery from not only by researchers, but also by the industry who are working on medical device, who are working on drug developments, who are working on specific chemical to test whether it's harmful or not to the human. They use the animals as a service. So if you look at these facilities that we have very huge investment by the governments and also by the university in preclinical facilities. And it can also be translated into publication, patent, grants, the training, and also the investment by the industry, not only in Malaysia, but outside the country, who come and invest in our animal research facilities for the purpose of preclinical testing. So we do have all this advancement. In Penang, we have iFarm, we have USM, and in Kelantan, we have our animal facilities in Kubang Krian that also can be housed to study on coronavirus outbreak, for example, or any vaccine developments. We do have that facilities ready in October.
Also, Professor, do carry out like vaccine test on animals too?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So now we also in Penang we have iFarm, and in KL we have under Universiti Malaya and also UKM and also UPM. They do have all these animal preclinical testing facilities, and that will translate to advancements in their research in animal preclinical study in animal model system, for example.
I see. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, because now, like, considering the pandemic now, everyone's going crazy about the vaccine, they're scared and everything. So, I can understand, like, okay, maybe trying vaccine on animals, like, really do help a lot. Because we cannot just simply carry out on humans also.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Okay.
I think I can understand the question that you will ask about the vaccine developments in Malaysia. What my opinions on that? Because as you know that, as I said, the advancement in research, especially under university and also MOH laboratory in NIH, for example, we have the advancements of this knowledge, but the fact that we're lacking is the money and we are lacking the people. So we do have some people who are expert in vaccine developments. We have in USM Kubang Krian, and we do have all these experts in other universities as well in Klang Valley like UM and UKM. But the fact that for vaccine development, it needs huge investment by the government. So because it's required not only like 100,000 ringgit, 200,000 ringgit or 500,000 ringgit or 1 million. No, it's a huge investment that, that also involve the facilities. So it can up to 1 or 2 billion Malaysian ringgit for vaccine developments. So some of our researchers in USM, rather than seeking government to get that money to develop the vaccine, he actually working with other university in Africa, for example, in Canada, in order to develop certain vaccine for tuberculosis, for example. So we do have, now we are lacking in terms of funding, and we are lacking in terms of talent. Different universities, they have different focus, but the government should take all these experts, come together, invest the money, and get the vaccine. And the next question will be what facilities we're going to use. So when it comes to facilities, we have boundaries. This is USM, this is UM, this is KKM. So all these kind of boundaries limits our progress in vaccine development, for example. But the huge factor will be the money, the funding.
I see. Oh, I can never thought about it on how big the effect will be. Okay. Moving on to the next question. Are there any concerns you have for animal research that is going on in Malaysia right now?
Yeah. My concerns on animal research in Malaysia is that is about the ethical concerns of the researchers or individuals that working on animals. sometimes even they are researchers, they are governed by ethical bodies like internal board reviews, for example, by USM or by other institutions. But the fact that also, although the ethical bodies or ICOOC members or international board review who reviewed the protocol, they claim that protocols in defense by the researchers say that, okay, this is doable and there is no much ethical concern. But who's actually will monitor that researchers in their lab? Because whatever been approved, you must do the experiment according to that approval. So whatever they are doing in the lab is their own self, meaning that they need to understand, they need to bind with the ethical ethics, the ethical concern about the animals handling and the animal practice. But the roles of ethical committees in internal board review, for example, they need to closely monitor their activities. If lacking of this closely monitoring, so they will come with unethical conducts of animal research. The second thing is about the knowledge and the skills of the researchers. When you work with animals, you cannot just jump the boat and you do whatever, what you like to the animals. But you need to have a proper knowledge and skill about animal husbandry, animal management, behavior of the animals. You need to know the signs of animals under stress. You need to know the signs of animals who are not well. You need to understand the whole aspects of the animal behavior before you jump into the animals research. So knowledge and skills in handling animals is very much important. It's not handling your pets at home, but sometimes they are very aggressive, sometimes they are very good. So the personnel who are taking care of animals, they know the biological effects or the expressions of animals every day because they monitor the animals' behavior. And the third part is about the facilities and the ownership of the facilities and the boundary that we created between facilities. So that's my concern about the facilities related to, because sometimes USM, we have our own facilities. In USM, we have 3 facilities related to animals. When it comes to UM, they have their own facilities. When it comes to other universities, they have their own facilities. But their own facilities, sometimes they need to have their own boundaries so that we cannot exchange in terms of data, we not exchange in terms of whatever knowledge that we have. So that's a limitation that we have. And of course, when do the animal research is not come with, there is no free lunch. So in this case, there is no free experiments about the animals, on animals. You need to buy the animals, involve cost. You need to maintain and manage the animals, involve cost. You need to do the treatment to the animals, involve cost. And then we need to dispose the animals, also involve the cost. But sometimes the budget or the grants available are very much limited for the researchers. The very low amount of money is not enough to conduct the animal research. So therefore, sometimes they only use, for example, like 3 animals per group, for example, like replication, 3 animals group A, 3 animals for group B, 3 animals for group C. When you have a low number of animals used for very specific experiment, they will increase the biasness in terms of biological variation between animals. So you need to have very high number of animals, for example, like 10 or 5 per group, for example. Then you can minimize the variation. You can get a very reproducible results. So how are you going to get this data if you have very low amount of budget for that particular experiments? So it will give some effect on the quality and the outputs of the research, whether that research is actually telling the truth about the biological responses, because you use a very limited number of animals for that experiment, and perhaps your conclusion is a very biased when you put other considerations, other factors that relate to that particular conclusion. So therefore, that's really my concern. When you have very low budget, you tend to use low number of animals, not have a proper replication, proper experimental design, towards the end, you claim that results, and that result is not actually represent the biological response of the animals toward the treatment, and it's not actually represent whenever you wanted to translate into clinical study. So that's all about my concern about animal research.
Oh, I see. There's actually quite a number of concerns regarding this, Professor. Okay. So let's say for me, for example, now I'm interested in animal research. So what would your advice be for me, or maybe to like the younger generations, or for anyone who is viewing this?
Okay. My advice to your younger generations regarding their interest in animal research, one thing is you need to equip and enhance yourself with knowledge and skills. Knowledge related to veterinary sciences, knowledge related to preclinical testing, knowledge about disease modeling, knowledge about the use of animals in research, and knowledge about laws and ethical conducts to do with animal in research. So these are knowledge are very much important for yourself to equip, at the same time to enhance your skill that related to that particular topics that you are really interested in. If you are a biomedical student, for example, yes, you have knowledge in and skills in vitro study using cells, for example. But what happened to the biological response of that particular treatments in the whole organism? So therefore, you require the animals. As I mentioned, you cannot just jump on the boat and row the boat, but you need to also have a skills on how to row the boats. You need to know the skills about the river. You need to know the skills about the lake and the boats they are riding. So these are the important aspects when we translate to the animal research as well. So not only knowledge about the animals, your knowledge and skills are very much important. And my second advice is know the purpose of doing research in animals. So you need to know what the purpose, the main purpose of doing animals in research. And is there any alternative of the animals? For example, can we just use the in vitro model system? Yes, you can use. Can we just use a 3D model system using like human skin, for example, now being sold, to do the experiment in vitro works? Can we just use that? And can we have another 3 R's concept, like replace, refine, and reduce the numbers? So these are the things that you need to know, and understand the purpose of doing research in animals. And my advice to you as well, the audience, when you now know about the animal research, little bit, get yourself Google, more details, more informations, and read about ethics and guidelines. And then your rules is to promote the awareness about the ethical way of doing research using animals. So you need to speak to your friends, you need to speak to your nanny, to speak to your Google media about your social media about the ethical way of doing research involving the animals. So the promotion itself, the promotion about the awareness is very, very much important, but it's lacking in Malaysia. And you need also, my advice, the last advice to you is you need to understand about translational research from bench to bedside, meaning that from the lab to the clinics, and also from the clinics to the bench. So bench to bedside to bench, in which these are the central dogma where is a very much give impactful research for benefits of for the mankind. So when you know the translational research, the implications of the translational research, and why it is important, so that will give you very much interest for you to explore more in veterinary science, especially using animals as your model system.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. Okay, so we've almost come to the end of the session. So I would like to direct you if there's any question from the viewers for now. Any Q&A session here? Okay, so there is one question from Lian. She asks, "Hi, Prof. Would like to know what happened to the animals after research, and also the animals live in a nice cold room, but they are allowed to roam free in gardens."
Okay, thank you, Lian. Yes. once the animal is completed, for example, in your ethical approval, you need to mention what would happen to the animals when the procedure is completed. Some of the researchers, they give the treatment to the animals by using certain drugs, certain herbs, certain chemicals to animals. Then they need to allow the animal freely roaming around. So just to understand the behavior of the animals. For example, like 3 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, even a year. So they need to make sure the animals, live freely. Then they wanted to see the long-term effects of that particular treatments. Some of the researchers, when they give a treatments like using chemicals, certain compounds or something, after 1 week, 3 weeks, 1 month, or 3 months, they need to euthanize the animals. Euthanize means that they need to kill the animals in order for them to get the bloods from the animals, in order for them to get the organs from the animals for further evaluation, for histology examination, for example, for other behavior kind of brain. They need to get the brain to measure, to evaluate the brain activities, etc. So when we kill the animals or euthanize the animals, then we need to dispose the dead body of the animals, or carcass disposal. So that we use a certain kind of service, whether they use incinerations, whether we bury the dead body of the animal. So, but normally in USM, we use a technique called incineration. This will be done by commercial company who will take our carcass and then they dispose. We need to pay for that. So the animals now, the animals live in a very nice cool. So yeah, it's not really cold like a winter, but just certain degrees of temperature we need to maintain, and we need to have like maintain 12 hours light and 12 hours dark. So we need to feed them, we need to give them enough water so that they can freely socialize themselves in that particular area of bedding or cages. But certain animals also we need to give like a refinement. Refinement meaning that you have like the paper, old paper, you need to give the animal so that the animal can play with it, so they're not under stress. So we can put the role something. So it depends on what the purpose of your research. So normally the condition or the facilities that we provide to the animals is to ensure the animals can freely roaming around and they can have their own biological activities without under stress. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, the time has extended a bit, but there's just one more question left from the audience. Would like to ask. So, yes, Ashlina has asked that why is euthanasia carried out for animals in the center?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the requirements of euthanasia to be done to the animals is that because the end stage of the experiments, the ethical concern is that what happened to the animals when you finish the experiments. So whether the animals will be allowed to alive, or whether the animals you need to kill the animals because of you require certain type of organs for evaluations. So normally we kill the animals because we don't want to have a further stress to the animals. So we kill the animals, we euthanize the animals because of we require to obtain the organs so that we can do another experiments for evaluation, for example. Especially for molecular works and histology works, we require that the organs, specific organs that we are tested on of our chemicals on, then we need to take them out and then we need to further evaluate. So this is where we provide that euthanasia process. For normally, researchers, when they do the experiment, the euthanasia needs to be done in our center because it must be supervised by veterinary officer. So as a normal researchers, you cannot simply get the drugs and euthanize the animals. No, you need to be supervised by our veterinary officer. That's why we provide that services in USM, in our center, because it requires drugs, and that drugs only the veterinary officer can hold and can buy and can keep that drugs. And whenever you need to end your animals, you need to euthanize and must be supervised by our veterinary officer. That's why we provide that.
I see. Okay, thank you very much, Professor, for sharing with us. Everything is very, very detailed. Thank you very much, Professor. It's really helped us a lot. I'll thank everyone for joining us today, and most importantly, Professor, thank you so much for sharing with us everything. This has helped us a lot and make us understand very, very deep in animal research, like very, very deep. So thank you very much for sharing with us today.
Thank you for sharing
Yes.
sharing the session. At the same time, for SEGi inviting me to do this sharing knowledge, etc.
Okay. For people who are watching this, please don't forget the link below is stated to claim your e-certificate. All right. So thank you very much, Professor, and we'll end our session.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
See you again.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.